For many years, Mexico was a country that drugs passed through. It was a route. Drugs from South America traveled through Mexico to get to the United States. This was a simple business for a long time. The groups that moved the drugs were small. They did not have big armies. They worked quietly. Their main goal was to move the product across the border without getting caught. The violence was not like it is today. The government in Mexico often looked the other way. The 1980s were dominated by one major cartel in Mexico, the Guadalajara cartel. It was led by a man named Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo. He was known as the Godfather. He did not produce the drugs. He was a logistician. He created the system that moved cocaine for the powerful Colombian cartels. Felix Gallardo understood that fighting was bad for business. He divided the country into territories, or plazas, and assigned them to different bosses. This created a kind of peace agreement, a pact that kept the violence low and the profits high for everyone involved in the illicit trade. This fragile peace shattered in 1989. Felix Gallardo was arrested for his role in the murder of a U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration agent named Enrique Kiki Camarena. From prison, he tried to keep control. He held a meeting with the country's top traffickers in Acapulco. He divided the federation. The Tijuana route went to his nephews, the Arellano Felix brothers. The Ciudad Juarez route went to the Carrillo Fuentes family. The Pacific Coast route in the state of Sinaloa went to a new group led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman and Ismael El Mayo Zambada. This was the birth of the modern cartels. The Tijuana cartel and the Sinaloa cartel began a violent war for control of border crossings and smuggling routes. In December 2006, a new president took office in Mexico. His name was Felipe Calderón. He won the election by a very small margin. One state was suffering terrible violence: Michoacán, Calderón's home state. A new and very violent cartel, La Familia Michoacana, was terrorizing people. They were beheading their rivals. They were leaving threatening messages for the public and government. Calderón decided to act decisively to restore order and prove his legitimacy. On December 11, 2006, Calderón launched Operation Michoacán. It was a massive military operation. He sent 6,500 Mexican army soldiers. He also sent federal police. Their mission: take back control from the cartels. It was a declaration of war. Immediate effects were dramatic. Soldiers set up checkpoints on roads. They raided houses. There were many arrests. There were gun battles. President Calderón's government adopted a specific plan called the Kingpin Strategy. The idea was simple. The government would focus on capturing or killing the leaders of the drug cartels. The government would announce it as a great victory. It was a way to show the public that the government was winning. This strategy led to many high-profile captures and killings. For example, Arturo Beltrán Leiva was killed in a shootout with Marines in 2009. But the strategy had a very dangerous and unintended consequence. When a kingpin was removed, it did not destroy the cartel. Instead, it created a power vacuum. The snake did not die. It grew more heads. This infighting caused the large, older cartels to break apart. They splintered into many smaller, more violent groups. These new groups had to fight for territory, for drug routes, for respect. They began to diversify their criminal activities. They moved beyond just drug trafficking. They started kidnapping people for ransom, extorting small businesses, stealing oil. The numbers tell a story of horrific escalation. By 2011, that number had soared to more than 27,000 per year. Complaints of human rights abuses by the military and police skyrocketed. Section 5. A change in strategy? In 2012, a new president, Enrique Peña Nieto, came to power. He promised a different approach. He said his main goal was not to hunt down kingpins, but to reduce the violence affecting citizens. A gendarmerie, trained to handle security in violent areas. The public was tired of the war and hoped for a measure of peace. However, the violence did not stop. After a brief dip, the homicide rate began to climb again, reaching new highs by the end of his term. The most famous case involved Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. In 2014, he was captured, a major victory for Peña Nieto. In July 2015, El Chapo escaped from a maximum security prison through a mile-long tunnel dug into his shower. It was a massive embarrassment for the government. 6 months later, in January 2016, he was recaptured after a deadly shootout. He was quickly extradited to the United States. The most defining and tragic event of the Peña Nieto years happened in September 2014. Iguala, Guerrero. 43 students from a teacher's college went missing. They were on their way to a protest when they were stopped by corrupt local police. The investigation later revealed the police handed the students over to Guerreros Unidos. The case became a symbol of the connection between the government and organized crime and the impunity that allows such terrible crimes to happen. Section 6. Hugs, Not Bullets. A New President's Plan. Andrés Manuel López Obrador, often called AMLO, became president in December 2018. He promised a radical change. His slogan was Abrazos, no balazos. Hugs, not bullets. He said the old way of fighting the cartels with military force had failed. Instead, he proposed to address the root causes of the problem. He wanted to fight poverty. He wanted to create opportunities for young people. He even suggested amnesty for some low-level criminals. He created a new security force called the National Guard to replace the corrupt federal police. He said it would be professional, honest, and respect human rights. But the National Guard was mostly made up of soldiers from the Army and from the Navy. Critics said it was military-led policing under a new name. In October 2019, a major test arrived in Culiacan, Sinaloa. Security forces captured Ovidio Guzman, a son of El Chapo. In response, hundreds of cartel gunmen flooded the city. They used heavy machine guns, they used armored vehicles, they blocked roads, they burned trucks, they took soldiers hostage. The city became a war zone. Fearing a massacre, López Obrador made a controversial choice. He ordered soldiers to release Ovidio Guzman. The Culiacanazo was a humiliation for the government. New cartels, like the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, grew more powerful and aggressive. The hugs, not bullets strategy did not bring the peace Mexico hoped for. Section 7. Continuity and Technology, the Sheinbaum Administration. In 2024, Claudia Sheinbaum was elected, making history as the country's first female leader. As the chosen successor of López Obrador, her security policy has largely been one of continuity. She has publicly supported the hugs, not bullets philosophy, emphasizing the need to address the social and economic root causes of crime, such as poverty and lack of opportunity for young people. However, Sheinbaum has also introduced her own emphasis, focusing on strengthening the justice system and using technology. Her plan involves a two-pronged approach. First, she aims to reduce the staggering levels of impunity by investing in the judicial system and prosecutors' offices to ensure that crimes are actually investigated and punished. Second, her administration is pushing for greater use of intelligence and surveillance technology. This involves expanding the use of cameras, data analysis, and other tools to track cartel operations and finances. The idea is not to declare an open war, but to strategically weaken the cartels by hitting them where it hurts: their leadership, their logistics, and their money. The National Guard remains on the streets, and the military continues to play a central role in domestic security. The deep-rooted problems of corruption within police forces and government institutions persist. The drug war in Mexico is not one fight. It is many fights between different groups. The Sinaloa cartel is one of the oldest and most powerful, known for trafficking drugs globally through complex networks. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJN, is a newer and extremely violent group that broke away from Sinaloa and is known for its military-style tactics and rapid expansion. Los Zetas were infamous for their brutality. They were started by ex-Special Forces soldiers who introduced new levels of violence like beheadings. The Gulf Cartel is one of the oldest trafficking organizations based on the Gulf Coast of Mexico, but it has been weakened by infighting and the rise of Los Zetas. The Juarez Cartel is based in the key border city of Ciudad Juarez and has been in a long and bloody war with the Sinaloa Cartel for control of that valuable smuggling route. The Tijuana Cartel, run by the Arellano Felix family, once controlled the lucrative Tijuana-San Diego border crossing, but has been significantly weakened by arrests and wars with Sinaloa. Their main business is trafficking drugs: cocaine, fentanyl, methamphetamine, heroin. But they also make money from many other crimes. They engage in human smuggling, kidnap, extort businesses, and steal fuel from national pipelines. To protect their business, cartels use extreme violence and corruption, and use their immense profits, estimated to be between $19 and $29 billion a year, to corrupt officials at every level. One of the biggest problems in Mexico's fight against drugs is corruption. For decades, drug cartels have used their money to buy protection. They pay police officers to ignore their activities. They pay them to provide information about planned government operations. Sometimes police officers work directly for the cartels, acting as lookouts, bodyguards, assassins. This corruption exists at the local, state, federal levels. This makes it almost impossible to build trust and conduct effective operations. This corruption leads to another huge problem: impunity. In Mexico, the vast majority of crimes are never solved or prosecuted. This creates a cycle of violence. Cartel members know they can kill, kidnap, extort people with little fear of being caught and punished. Because local and federal police were seen as too corrupt to fight the cartels, President Calderón sent in the military. The army was supposed to be less corrupt and more powerful than the police. However, soldiers are trained for war, not for police work. Putting the military on the streets to do police work has led to a dramatic increase in human rights abuses. There have been thousands of complaints of torture, forced disappearances, extrajudicial killings committed by soldiers. Instead of feeling safer, many citizens fear the soldiers as much as they fear the cartels, resulting in more violence and a breakdown of trust between the state and its people. The United States plays a very large role in Mexico's drug war. The main reason the cartels are so rich and powerful is the huge demand for illegal drugs in the U.S. This money flows south to the cartels in Mexico. It is the fuel that powers their entire operation. In response to the escalating violence, the U.S. government started a program in 2008 called the Merida Initiative: Equipment, Technology, Training. The two countries cooperate closely on security. This cooperation led to the capture of major kingpins like El Chapo Guzman. However, this cooperation is not always smooth. While the U.S. provides security aid, it is also the source of another major problem: guns, which makes it easy for cartel associates to buy thousands of powerful weapons. These guns flow south across the border, arming the cartels and making the violence much deadlier. Sending the military to fight drug traffickers does not bring peace. This strategy, started in 2006, led to an explosion of violence. The kingpin strategy shattered them into smaller, more violent groups. The number of deaths and missing people rose to historic levels. Experts and activists suggest focusing on two simple but difficult ideas. The first is to reduce the demand for drugs, especially in the United States, treating drug use as a public health problem, investing in prevention, treatment, education programs.